Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the First Look series where we take a holistic look at all 138 FBS programs, give you my thoughts on the roster going into the upcoming college football season, as well as give you some looks in terms of what I am looking at in terms of a possible record prediction as of how things currently stand in the 2026 campaign, right? So, very excited to get into this next alliteration as we're almost inside the top 70. So, very excited to, as we get a little bit closer to who that number one team in the nation is, talking a little bit more about these power conference teams in depth. But for now, we go on the opposite spectrum of the power conference ranks. We are going to talk about one of the worst P4 teams in America. So hopefully you guys are excited for this one. If you are, make sure to go ahead, hit that like button, as well as hit that subscribe button as well. If you do happen to be brand new to the channel, that would help a brother out tremendously in that endeavor. And let's talk about not only one of the worst teams in the P4, but definitely my worst ranked team in the ACC going into this year. And it is, in fact, going to be the Boston College Eagles. They come in ranked 71st in the country for me going into this season. And this Boston College team is going to have the most to prove out of anyone in the ACC, starting at the very bottom. And it's particularly an important year as well for Bill O'Brien as well, right? Because he's coming in to this upcoming season. And this is a man that is 9-16 in his 2 years at Boston College, but that doesn't even tell the whole story. First year at Boston College, everything was perfectly fine. They were at least an average looking football team. They end up finishing above 500, make it to a bowl game, lose the Pinstripe Bowl to Nebraska, but it's fine. Not a bad first year, right? Last year, they went in the step in the opposite direction. Outside of their FCS opponent that they played, the only team that they beat last year was Syracuse on the road at the very end of the season. And that was a Syracuse team that was decimated by injuries. So, again, this is a team that is kind of trending in the wrong direction. And in a third year of the Bill O'Brien era, definitely going to have some things to prove here. Might be a tad warm, not necessarily all things on the hot seat, because he does have that bowl appearance in year number one. But there is an argument to be made that the seat is warm right there up in Boston at this current juncture. So, and the thing about this Boston College team too is that in spite of everything that happened last year, they had four guys that were NFL caliber guys on their roster. They had Lewis Bond, who was a top 300 prospect, as well as Jeremiah Franklin at tight end. Quintavious Hutchin was getting some NFL looks, and the same absolutely could be said for Jude Bowery on the offensive line. So they had some guys on this roster. It was a decently talented roster in spite of the fact that they finished 2-10, but those talented guys on the roster were too far and in between everyone else that was happening on this roster, right? So you're going to have to figure out first and foremost how to replace those NFL guys. But then you also lose a couple of really big pieces in the transfer portal as well. You lose Omar Forden, the safety who was from the state of Florida and does end up deciding to go home. He ends up transferring to Miami, and he was a stud at defensive back. Definitely an all ACC caliber defensive back, possibly an NFL caliber defensive back. Was going to be the anchor of your defense this year, and now he's going to be gone. And just looking at what Boston College brought in from a transfer portal perspective, I definitely worry about their ability to be able to cover guys on the defensive side of the ball, right? I really worry about that secondary going into year three of the Bill O'Brien era, because who they brought in the transfer portal, not really guys that were necessarily productive at their last stop. So you're really hoping that guys internally develop and can replace what Omar Forden left behind. It's probably going to take multiple guys to do it, to be honest with you. Then they also lose one of their top receivers. Not only losing a Lewis Bond, but they also lose Reed Harris. That's a really good receiver that Dylan Longergan was able to rely upon last year. Well, now he's off the way across the country himself. He ends up going to Arizona State, and the Sun Devils are going to be very happy to have him. Cutler Boley, who had some good moments at Kentucky last year, Now the Sun Devils quarterback, he is going to be happy to have him as a possible security blanket and go-to target. But as for this current staff at Boston, you can't say the same thing. So you're losing two really good wide receivers, plus your tight end is left for the NFL draft as well. So you really worry about the offensive weaponry. And I haven't even talked about Turbo Richard Iver, who transfers to Indiana, almost had 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. He had his big time moments for Boston College. The offense wasn't the biggest issue, but defensively, again, you really worry about the defense going into this year, particularly on the back end. So the back end is going to be the question mark for the defensive backs. Do worry about the offensive weaponry. Not that it's going to be completely bare, it's just a question of are they going to be as good as the Turbo Richards or the Reed Harrises of the world, right? Because they did bring in a couple of intriguing weapons in the transfer portal. I really like the addition of Evan Dickens, who transfers from Liberty. And listen, Liberty had a disappointing year last year, and they ended up finishing below 500 for the first time in a really long time out there in the state of Virginia. But it wasn't Evan Dickens' fault. 1,400 total yards, 17 touchdowns last year. Evans Dickens was extremely good in that Liberty offense and possibly comes in here and could be a vocal point that could be called upon for Bill O'Brien this upcoming season. I also am intrigued by the addition of Reed Swanson as well. Wide receiver from Colgate comes into the northeastern part of the country yet again. Almost 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2025. So Reed Swanson, certainly a name to watch as well. Thinks he cracks that starting lineup for the Boston College Eagles this fall. But really, what intrigues me the most is this quarterback position. Dylan Lonergan is gone. He leaves to become possibly the next starting quarterback for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights under Greg Schiano, and was decent. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he was a plus by any means, but that is an experienced quarterback leaving your football team, and those are hard to find. Those that have meaningful game reps and were okay in those game reps. I mean, Lonergan had 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last year, so I mean, he was okay, but who they brought in could potentially be better, and certainly is a fascinating watch. Mason McKenzie, the quarterback from Saginaw Valley, comes to Boston to try and be the savior for Bill O'Brien's football program. 3,000 yards and 27 touchdowns in 2025. Dude was electric to watch at Division II Saginaw Valley. And we've seen this song and dance before with Trinidad Chambliss coming from Division II Ferris State and then coming in and really thriving in Lane Kiffin's system at Ole Miss and really having a breakout season that no one really expected, right? So, really fascinated by this quarterback position at the end of the day. Does Mason McKenzie have that Trinidad Chambliss like year? Because if he does, then you're suddenly talking about an opportunity for Boston College to exceed a lot of people's expectations, including my own. But there's a reason why he started out at Division Two, going from Division Two to the FBS. That's a big jump. So I am curious to see how that ends up working out. But McKenzie definitely is a name to watch. So really am concerned about the offensive weaponry in totality. Certainly not necessarily the running back position, but I definitely worry about what they're going to do at wide receiver and tight end. Who of those offensive playmakers are going to be on the perimeter, as well as that defensive secondary as well. But if you look at the other layers of this defensive front seven, the defensive front seven actually could be better than what it was last year. I really liked the additions of Alex DeGreek this fall. Guy transfers in from Harvard, was a productive player for the Harvard Crimson over in the Ivy League. 7.5 TFLs and 6 sacks in 2025. Alex DeGreek is someone that is absolutely someone you could depend on over the course of this season and should give some additional juice for the Boston College defensive line. And then how about Anthony Polano as well? Transfers from Washington State. Really was someone that would have been poised for a breakout season if he was still with that Washington State football program. But even here at Boston College, I still believe that Anthony Polano is someone that absolutely could get meaningful reps and possibly a starting gig with this Boston football team heading into this year as well. So I really look at the front seven. I think the front seven, you could definitely say, has been improved. But again, at the end of the day, you really need those offensive playmakers to step up. The defensive secondary, who's going to replace Omar Fortin's production? And then the same for the offensive line. How do you replace Drew Bowery, who is your really stalwart left tackle? How do you replace that as well? So, questions and multiple questions, certainly, that will need to be answered between now and what we have going on for the actual season. But let's go ahead and jump into the second part of it. And this is going to be the schedule for Boston College. So, not only is Boston College one of the rougher looking teams in the ACC, but they also have the strongest strength of schedule in this conference as well. Their schedule ranks as the 22nd hardest schedule in college football, but it's the toughest one in the ACC, with many of the tougher schedules residing in the Big Ten and the SEC itself. But going back to Boston College for a second, though, there's a lot of tough games on here that Boston College is going to have to really work itself through. I mean, I think Cincinnati, playing them on the road to open the season up, that's going to be a tough play because Nippert Stadium is an underrated environment. I will say that first and foremost about Nippert Stadium. So that's going to be a tough game out the jump. Virginia Tech is very much improved. SMU has some capabilities of winning this conference, and ditto for Pitt. Georgia Tech is on the rise as a program. Manny Diaz, the coach for the Duke Blue Devils, he's very underrated as a head coach. I mean, that's the defending ACC champions. Mike Norvell is going to be a much more talented team than what Bill O'Brien is going to employ. So even that game at home is not going to be a slam dunk either. And then two of these last three games, you have Notre Dame on the road and then Miami on the road. Two teams that were either in the playoff or very close to making the college football playoff. So really it comes down to, okay, I think there's a few games that I think they can win. Obviously the main game, it's an FCS opponent. I think that's the one safe win that you can point to. But then the other two games, Rutgers at home, and that's going to be the return game for Dylan Lonergan. Comes back to his home campus and tries to maybe have a little bit of a revenge game against Boston College. It's going to be an interesting environment, so to speak, for the former Boston College Eagle. Do give the Eagles a slight edge here because I'm not super high on that Rutgers football team. At least not much enough to go on the road and maybe win that type of game. Syracuse game also interests me as well because we talked about how Syracuse was a much better team in the month of September before all those injuries started to hit. And once those injuries started to hit, they just did not look like the same football team. And so kind of intriguing to see what kind of Syracuse team that we have, especially when we get into the month of November. How motivated is Syracuse? But then you could say the same thing about Boston College if it goes the way I think it's going to go. How much is Boston College going to be motivated at this time, right? So that's a toss-up game in its own right as well. Definitely leave some room for Boston College to slightly improve, but I think realistically, just looking at this team, I don't think that this team is much better if they're even better at all in comparison to last year. So I have them staying put for right now at 2-10 with a little bit of room to maybe improve by a win or so. And after that, I don't think that we are going to. Not that I don't think Bill O'Brien gets fired, but we do see an upgrade going from being warm to, by the end of the season, seeing Bill O'Brien on the hot seat. I don't anticipate him being fired, though. But I am intrigued by what you guys think down in the comment section. Am I too high or too low on this Boston College football team? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this deep dive of Boston College football, I would really appreciate if you do a couple of things for me real fast. Go ahead and hit that like button. And then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. This is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.